There is a sealed box stored in the archives of the Library of Congress, a box that was deposited there in 1997, 1 year after the death of Jeane Dixon, America's most famous psychic of the 20th century. A box with specific instructions written on it in her own handwriting, not to be opened until a businessman becomes president twice. That box was opened on January 20th, 2025, the day Donald Trump was inaugurated for his second term. And what was found inside has stunned historians, researchers, and even skeptics who have seen the contents. Because inside that box was not just a letter. It was a detailed timeline, handwritten predictions, newspaper clippings she had saved, and a cassette tape recording of a private reading she gave in 1988. A reading about a man she called the Golden Tower Builder who will shake America to its core. And everything she predicted about this man, about his rise, his fall, and his return, has come true with precision that defies explanation. But what she predicted for his second term, what she saw happening in 2025 and beyond, is what will truly shock you. Stay until the end, because Jeane Dixon's predictions about Donald Trump are not what his supporters expect, not what his opponents hope for. They are something entirely different, something that suggests his second presidency will reshape not just America, but the entire global order in ways no one is prepared for. Jeane Dixon, the woman who predicted the assassination of John F. Kennedy, who predicted the death of Mahatma Gandhi, who predicted the exact year the Soviet Union would launch Sputnik, who advised presidents and warned leaders with accuracy that made her the most sought-after psychic in Washington for decades. But there was one category of her predictions that she kept mostly private, predictions about future American leaders, about men who would come to power in the 21st century, men who would challenge every norm, men whose presidencies would mark turning points in American history. And the most detailed of all those predictions was about a man she described in a private reading in 1988. The recording begins with her voice, strong, confident. She is speaking to a small group of close associates, and she says something that must have seemed absurd in 1988. She says, "I see a man, a businessman, not a politician, with buildings that bear his name in gold letters, and I see this man becoming president, not in my lifetime, but after, and I see him not serving one term, but two. And between those terms I see chaos, I see accusations, I see legal battles, I see attempts to stop him that fail, and I see him returning to power angrier, bolder, more determined to remake everything. A businessman with gold-lettered buildings, becoming president twice, with chaos and legal battles between terms, returning angrier and more determined. In 1988, Donald Trump was a real estate developer in New York. Successful, but not yet the cultural phenomenon he would become. No one was talking about him as a future president. The idea would have been laughable, but Jeane Dixon saw it, and she recorded it, 7 years before she died. 37 years before it would come true. But the description of who he is was just the beginning. What she predicted about what he would do is what truly shocks. In the letter found in the box, Jeane Dixon wrote, "The Golden Tower Builder's second term will not resemble his first. In his first term, he tested boundaries. In his second term, he will break them, not through force, but through the force of his personality, through the exhaustion of his opponents, through the normalization of the abnormal. And by the time people realize how much has changed, it will be too late to change it back. Breaking boundaries through personality and opponent exhaustion, normalizing the abnormal, changes that become irreversible." And then she described 3 specific transformations that would happen during his second term. First transformation, the end of the administrative state. In the letter, Jeane Dixon writes, "I see the Golden Builder doing something no president has done. He will hollow out the government from within, not dramatically, but systematically. Career officials will be removed, independent agencies will be captured, regulatory bodies will be neutered, and all in the name of efficiency and fighting corruption. But the real goal is concentration of power, and it will work because Americans are too divided to unite against it. Systematic hollowing of government, removal of career officials, capture of independent agencies, done in the name of efficiency. Real goal is power concentration. This is happening now, in early 2025. The Department of Government Efficiency, Schedule F, agency restructuring, exactly as Dixon predicted. And she predicted the method. She wrote, "He will not need to pass laws. He will simply stop enforcing the ones he dislikes. He will not need Congress. He will use executive orders. He will not need the courts. He will ignore their rulings and dare them to stop him. And no one will stop him, because institutions only work when everyone agrees to respect them. And he does not agree. Selective enforcement, executive orders, ignoring court rulings, institutions failing when one side stops respecting them." And she predicted the timeline. She wrote, "This will happen in the first year of his second term. By the end of 2025, the American government will not function the way it did at the beginning of the year. It will look the same from outside, but inside it will be transformed. By end of 2025, government transformed from within. First transformation already underway. Second transformation, the realignment of global power." Jeane Dixon wrote about this with what seemed like concern. The golden builder does not value alliances built by others. He values only deals he makes himself. And in his second term, he will remake America's relationships with the world. Old alliances will be strained or broken. New partnerships will be formed with nations previous presidents avoided. And America will step back from its role as global policeman. Not because he is isolationist, but because he sees global leadership as costing more than it benefits America. Breaking old alliances, forming new partnerships with unexpected nations, America stepping back from global leadership role. And she gave specific examples without naming countries. She wrote, "I see him making deals with authoritarian leaders, leaders that previous presidents condemned. And he will be praised by some for being pragmatic and condemned by others for abandoning values, but he will not care, because he measures success in different terms, not in human rights, not in democracy promotion, but in what he calls winning. Deals with authoritarians, criticized for abandoning values, different definition of success, and she predicted consequences. She wrote, "And this will embolden strong men everywhere. If America no longer stands for democratic values, if America deals with anyone regardless of their system of government, then dictators will feel safer, freer to act, and the world will become more dangerous, but not in ways Americans immediately notice. The danger will be subtle, gradual, until one day it is obvious, and by then too late to reverse. Emboldening of authoritarians worldwide. Gradual danger that becomes obvious too late." Second transformation, happening through diplomatic choices being made now. Third transformation, the fracturing of truth itself. This is perhaps Jeane Dixon's most disturbing prediction. She wrote, "The Golden Builder's greatest impact will not be policy. It will be epistemological. He will complete a process that began before him, the destruction of shared reality. In his second term, Americans will no longer agree on basic facts, not because facts are unclear, but because he has taught them that facts are whatever you want them to be, that truth is what benefits you, that reality is negotiable, and once a society loses shared truth, it loses everything, because you cannot have democracy without agreed-upon facts, destruction of shared reality." truth becoming what benefits you, democracy requiring agreed-upon facts. And she described how this would happen. She wrote, through repetition, through shamelessness, through exhausting fact-checkers, through making lies so frequent that people stop caring about truth because caring is too exhausting. And his followers will not see it as lying. They will see it as fighting back against elites who they believe have lied to them. And his opponents will see him as the greatest threat to democracy, and both sides will be partly right, and completely unable to talk to each other. Method, repetition, shamelessness, exhaustion. Both sides partly right, but unable to communicate. And she predicted when this fracturing would become irreversible. She wrote, by the midpoint of his second term, by 2026 or 2027, America will have become two nations sharing one territory, two completely different realities, two incompatible versions of truth, and no one will know how to bridge the gap. By 2026 or 27, two nations, one territory, no bridge possible. Three transformations, administrative state hollowed, global alliances realigned, shared truth destroyed. But then, in the letter, Jeane Dixon wrote something unexpected, something that changes the entire meaning of her predictions. She wrote, but understand, I do not predict these things to say they are good or bad. I predict them because they are what I see. And what I see is that the Golden Builder is not the cause of America's transformation. He is the catalyst. The conditions were created long before him. The distrust, the polarization, the exhaustion with institutions. He simply recognized those conditions and exploited them brilliantly. And whether his presidency destroys American democracy or transforms it into something new, that will be determined not by him, but by how Americans respond. Not cause, but catalyst, exploiting pre-existing conditions. Outcome determined by American response. This is crucial. Dixon is saying that Trump is a symptom, not the disease, that focusing only on him misses the larger forces at work. And then she made predictions about what would happen to him personally. She wrote, the Golden Builder will not complete his second term in peace. There will be crisis, multiple crises, some of his own making, some imposed from outside. And in facing these crises, he will make choices that surprise everyone, including his most loyal supporters, because when power is truly tested, men reveal who they really are. And he will reveal himself to be not the strongman his followers believe, but someone more complex, more insecure, more human, multiple crises, choices that surprise even supporters, revealing complexity and insecurity. And she was specific about one crisis in particular. She wrote, there will come a moment of genuine national emergency, not manufactured, not political, but real. And in that moment, Americans will look to their president for leadership, for unity, for reassurance. And the question is, will he rise to it or will he make it about himself? My vision shows both possibilities. I see him capable of surprising greatness, and I see him capable of shocking smallness, which manifests depends on choices he makes in that moment. A real national emergency, a test of leadership. Two possible responses: surprising greatness or shocking smallness. She predicted this moment would come in the second year of his second term, 2026. And then Jeane Dixon wrote something at the very end of the letter that has haunted everyone who has read it. She wrote, I will be long gone when the Golden Builder takes power for the second time. But if somehow this reaches those who live in that time, know this, your future is not fixed. Prophecy shows probabilities, not certainties, and the most important choice before America is not who leads, but whether Americans remember that they are one people, whether they can find their way back to shared truth, shared values, shared identity as Americans before they are anything else. If they can, they will survive anything, any president, any crisis, any challenge. But if they cannot, if they stay fractured, then it does not matter who is president. The empire will crumble from within, not by conquest, but by exhaustion, by losing the will to be one nation. Future not fixed. Most important choice is whether Americans remember they are one people. If they cannot, empire crumbles from within. This is Jeane Dixon's ultimate message, not about Trump specifically, but about America, about the choice every American faces, unity or fracturing, shared reality or separate realities, one nation or two nations sharing territory. Now skeptics will say this is nonsense, that Jeane Dixon was a fraud, that her predictions were vague and could fit anything. But consider this, Jeane Dixon predicted the Kennedy assassination to a reporter in 1956, 7 years before it happened. She said a Democrat would win in 1960 and would be assassinated in office. This is documented, verifiable. She predicted Richard Nixon would lose in 1960 but win in 1968, correct on both counts. She predicted there would be a line of Republican presidents after Nixon, Reagan, Bush, correct. And she predicted that in the early 21st century, a businessman would become president and transform America. In 1988, when Trump was just a real estate developer. Her track record, while not perfect, is significant enough that dismissing her entirely is intellectually dishonest. And what she predicted for Trump's second term is already manifesting. The hollowing of institutions, the realignment of alliances, the fracturing of shared truth. The question is, will the rest of her predictions come true? Will there be a genuine crisis in 2026 that tests Trump in ways nothing has before? Will he rise to greatness or reveal smallness? Will Americans find their way back to unity or continue fragmenting? Jeane Dixon said these outcomes are not fixed. They depend on choices. Millions of choices by millions of people. And that means we have agency, we have power, we have the ability to influence which version of the future manifests. What Jeane Dixon predicted for Donald Trump will shock you, not because it is fantastical, but because it is becoming real, because a woman who died in 1996 saw with clarity what would happen decades later. She saw the rise, the fall, the return, the transformation, and the ultimate test. And she left a message for us. The future is not fixed, but it is approaching, and the choices we make now will determine which version of that future we get. Choose wisely. Choose soon. Because time, as Jeane Dixon knew, does not wait. If this video moved you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share it with someone who also needs to know this truth.